Good evening and welcome to CHA's production of Little Women. Please turn off your phones, no flash photography, and if you would do us the favor, please put your phones on airplane mode for the entirety of the production. If you need to leave the auditorium, then go through the side doors, please. Thank you.
It was cold that December evening, but it was warm beside the fire in the little house. The four girls who sat around that cheerful blaze, knitting socks for the soldiers' aid, should have been content, but the prospect of the holiday about to take place seemed dismal. Jo was 15, and she was the tomboy of the family. As usual, she was the first to say what everyone was thinking. Christmas won't be Christmas without any presents.
I don't think it's fair that some girls have plenty of pretty things and other girls none at all.
We have mother and father and each other.
We haven't got father, and we won't have him for a long time.
You know the reason Mother proposed not having any presents this Christmas was because it's going to be a hard winter for everyone. We ought not to spend money for pleasure when our men are suffering so in the army. We can't do much, but we can make our little sacrifices.
But I don't see how the little we'd spend would do any good. We've each got $1, and the army wouldn't be helped much by that. I agree not to expect anything from Mother or you, and I did want to buy a book for myself.
I plan to get some new music.
I want a nice box of drawing pencils.
Mother didn't say anything about our money, and she wouldn't want us to give up everything. Let's each buy what we want and have a little fun. I'm sure we work hard enough to earn it.
I know I do, teaching those tiresome children nearly all day. Meg, who was 16, sometimes wished she could be a real lady and spend her days taking tea and paying calls. But with Mr. March far away in the army, all the girls had to make sacrifices. Meg worked as a governess, while Jo spent her days as paid companion to their cantankerous Aunt March.
How would you like to be shut up for hours with a fussy old lady?
It's naughty to fret, but I think washing dishes and keeping things tidy is the worst work in the world. My hands get so stiff. I can't practice well at all. Beth was the musician of the family. She was too shy to thrive at school and did her studies at home as best she could. With her two older sisters away at their jobs and little Amy off at school, it fell to Beth to be the homemaker of the family. But if she complained this once, it was a rarity.
Well, at least you don't have to go to school with impertinent girls who plague you if you don't know your lessons, laugh at your dresses, and label your father if he isn't rich.
If you mean libel, I'd say so, and not talk about pickles as if Papa was a pickle bottle.
I know what I mean, and you needn't be satirical about it. 12-year-old Amy was the baby of the family, and she really did her best at school. But she was better at drawing than vocabulary, and her schoolmasters constantly complained that she filled her primers with pictures of clouds and rabbits.
The clock struck 6, and having swept up the hearth, Beth put a pair of slippers down to warm before the fire. Somehow, the sight of the old shoes had a good effect on the girls. Mother was coming, and everyone brightened to welcome her.
Those are quite worn out. Marmee must have a new pair.
I thought I'd get her some with my dollar.
No, I shall.
I'm the oldest.
I'm the man of the family now that Papa's away, and I shall provide the slippers.
Why don't we each get her something and not get anything for ourselves?
I will buy her a nice pair of gloves.
Army shoes, best to be had.
Some handkerchiefs, all hemmed.
I'll get her a little bottle of cologne. She likes it. It won't cost much, so I'll have enough left over to get my pencils.
Let's let Marmee think we're getting things for ourselves, and then surprise her. We must go shopping tomorrow afternoon. There's so much to do about the play for Christmas night.
I'm not acting anymore after this year. I'm getting too old for such things.
Ha! You won't stop acting as long as you can trail round in a white gown with your hair down and wear gold-papered jewelry. You are the best actress we've got, and there'll be an end of everything if you quit.
So merry, my girls.
Marmee!
There was so much to do, getting the boxes ready to go tomorrow, that I didn't have time to come home to dinner. Has anyone called, Beth?
No, Marmee.
How's your cold, Meg?
Much better.
Joe, you look tired to death. Come and kiss me, baby. While making these maternal inquiries, the girls flew about, each trying to make things comfortable in her own way. Meg arranged the tea, Joe brought wood, Beth trotted to and fro from parlor and kitchen, while Amy gave directions to everyone. I've got a treat for you.
A letter! 3 cheers for Father.
Yes, a nice long letter. He is well and sends all sorts of loving wishes for Christmas and a special message to you girls.
Letters were all the March women had of their father that hard winter. But as hard as his absence was to bear, they knew that his trials were much worse. Yet, this was a cheerful, hopeful letter, full of lively descriptions of camp life, marches, and military news. And only at the end did the writer's heart overflow with fatherly love and longing for the little girls at home.
Give them all my dear love and a kiss. Tell them I think of them by day, pray for them by night, find my best comfort in their affection at all times. Years seems very long to wait before I see them, but I know that they will remember all I've said to them, that they will be loving children to you, do their duty faithfully, and conquer themselves so beautifully that when I return to them, I may be even fonder and prouder than ever for my little women.
I am a selfish girl, but I'll truly try to do better, so he won't be disappointed in me.
I think too much of my looks and hate to work, but I won't anymore.
I'll try and be what he loves to call me, a little woman, and not be so rough and wild, but do my duty here instead of wanting to be somewhere else.
Beth said nothing, but wiped away her tears with the blue army sock and began to knit with all her might.
When the girls came downstairs that Christmas morning, they found only old Hannah. She had been with the family since Meg was born and was considered by them all more as a friend than a servant.
Where's Mother?
Goodness only knows. Some poor creature came a-begging, and your ma went straight off to see what was needed. There never was a woman like her for giving.
Here she comes! Hide the basket, quick!
Merry Christmas, little daughters.
Merry Christmas, Marmee! Many of them!
Come, gather close. I want to say a word before we sit down. Not far from here lies a woman with a little newborn baby. 6 children huddled into one bed to keep from freezing because they have no fire. There's nothing to eat over there. My girls, Will you give them your breakfast as a Christmas present?
I'm so glad you came before we started to eat.
Mother, may I go and help carry the things to the poor little children?
I shall take the cream and muffins.
I thought you'd do it. Shall all go and help me. It was a very happy breakfast. And when they went away, leaving comfort behind, I think there were not, in all the city, 4 merrier people than the hungry little girls who gave away their breakfast on Christmas morning.
And when they had returned, a huge Christmas feast had appeared. The girls stared at each other in rapturous amazement.
Was it fairies?
Santa Claus?
Mother did it.
Aunt March had a good fit and sent the supper.
All wrong. Old Mr. Lawrence sent it.
The Lawrence boy's grandfather? What in the world put such a thing into his head?
Hannah told one of his servants about your sacrifice. He knew my father years ago and sent me a polite note this afternoon saying he hoped I would allow him to express his friendly feeling towards my children by sending in over a few trifles in honor of the day.
That Lawrence boy put into his head, I know he did. He's a capital fellow, and I wish we could get acquainted. He looks as if he'd like to get to know us, but he's shy. And Meg is so prim, she won't let me speak to him when we pass. The Lawrence boy, as the girls had taken to calling him, was destined to become one of their closest friends. But although he lived next door, their first real meeting was to be in another place altogether. It began a few days after Christmas, when Joe and Meg received
An invitation! A regular note of invitation from Mrs. Gardner for tomorrow night.
Mrs. Gardner would be happy to see Miss March and Miss Josephine at a little dance on New Year's Eve.
Marmee says we can go. Now, what shall we wear?
What's the use of asking that when you know we shall wear poplins because we haven't got anything else? After various mishaps with her hair and dress, Meg was ready for the ball. And with the united exertions of the entire family, Joe's hair was got up and dressed on.
Mrs. Gardner, a stately old lady, greeted them kindly and handed them over to Sally, the eldest of her 6 daughters. Welcome, my dears. So glad you could come. Sally will introduce you round.
Oh, we all know lovely Meg. This is her sister, Josephine.
Meg knew Sally and was at ease very soon, but Joe felt as much out of place as a colt in a flower garden. She saw a big red-headed youth approaching her corner, and, fearing he meant to dance with her, slipped into a curtain recess. Dear me, I didn't know anyone was here.
Don't mind me. Stay if you like. I only came because I didn't know anyone and felt rather strange at first. You know?
You live near us, don't you?
Next door. I've seen you ever so many times. And, how is your cat doing, Miss March?
Nicely, thank you, Mr. Lawrence. But I'm not Miss March. I'm only Joe.
I'm not Mr. Lawrence. I'm only Laurie.
Laurie Lawrence? What an odd name.
Well, my real name is Theodore, but I don't like it because the fellows called me Dora, so I made them say Laurie instead.
I hate my name too. How'd you make them stop calling you Dora?
I, thrashed them.
Well, I can't thrash Aunt March, so I suppose I shall have to bear it.
Don't you like to dance, Miss Joe?
I can't because I told Meg I wouldn't because... You won't tell?
Never.
Well, I have a bad trick of standing before the fire, and so I burn my frocks. And I scorched this one, and though it's nicely mended, it shows.
Joe? Joe!
All right. Will you excuse me?
Oh, I've sprained my ankle. That stupid high heel turned. Oh, I don't know how I'm ever going to get home.
I knew you'd hurt your feet in those silly shoes. Maybe Mr. Lawrence...
No, don't ask or tell anyone.
Can I help you? Said a friendly voice. And there was Laurie, who was so obliging that even particular Meg pronounced him,
A nice boy.
Please let me take you home. It's getting late out, and it's starting to rain.
It's so early. You can't mean to go yet.
Oh, I always go early. I do, truly. And that settled it. Soon, the Lawrence boy would practically be one of the family. One day, Jo found herself shoveling paths in the wide expanse of snow between her little house and the Lawrences' stately mansion. She could see young Laurie gazing from his window in a forlorn kind of way.
That boy is suffering for society and fun. His grandpa doesn't know what's good for him and keeps him shut up all alone. He needs a party of jolly boys to play with, or somebody young and lively. I have a great mind to go and tell the old gentleman so. How do you do? Are you sick?
Better, thank you. I had a bad cold and been shut up a week. It's dull as tombs.
Have someone come and see you then.
There isn't anyone I'd like to see. The boys make such a row and my head is weak.
Isn't there some nice girl who'd read and amuse you? Girls are quiet.
Don't know any.
You know us.
So I do. Will you come, please?
I'm not quiet and nice. But shut the window like a good boy and wait till I come. With that, Jo shouldered her shovel and marched into the house. Here I am, bag and baggage. Mother sent her love and was happy if I could do anything for you. Meg wanted me to bring some of her blancmange. She makes it very nicely. And Beth thought her cats would be comforting.
Is Beth the rosy one who sometimes goes out with a little basket?
Yes, that's Beth. She's my girl, and a regular good one she is, too.
The pretty one is Meg, and the little one is Amy, I believe?
Yes, but how did you...
I often hear you calling to one another, and when I'm alone up here, I can't help but looking over at your house. You always seem to be having such good times. I beg your pardon for being so rude, but sometimes you forget to close the curtain at the window where the flowers are, and when the lamps are lighted, it's like looking at a picture. To see the fire, and all of you are on the table with your mother.
We'll never draw that curtain any more, and I give you leave to look as much as you like. I just wish, instead of peeping, you'd come and see us. Wouldn't your grandpa let you?
I think he would, if your mother asks him. He's very kind, though he doesn't look it. Only he's afraid I might be a bother to strangers.
We're not strangers, we're neighbors, and you needn't be afraid to be a bother.
You see, Grandfather lives among his books and doesn't much care what happens outside. My tutor, Mr. Brooke, doesn't stay here, and I have no one to go about with me, so I just stay at home.
That's bad. You ought to make an effort to go everywhere you're asked. Then you'll have plenty of friends and pleasant places to go to.
Jo proceeded to give him a lively description of her Aunt March, and didn't mind having a laugh at the fidgety old lady, her fat poodle, and the parrot that talked Spanish. When she told him about the prim old gentleman who came once to woo Aunt March, and how in the middle of a fine speech, how Polly had tweaked his wig right off, the boy lay back and laughed until tears ran down his cheeks. Oh, that does me no end of good. Tell on, please.
Much encouraged by her success, Joe did tell on all about their plays and plans, their hopes and fears for father, and the most interesting events of the little world in which the sisters lived. Then they got to talking about books, and to Joe's delight, she found that Lori loved them as much as she did.
If you like them so much, come down and see ours. Grandfather is out, so you needn't be afraid.
I'm not afraid of anything.
I don't suppose you are. So come on then.
What richness. Theodore Lawrence, you ought to be the happiest boy in the world.
Well, a fellow can't live on books.
Mercy me, it's your grandpa.
So what if it is? You're not afraid of anything. Would you mind if I left you for a moment?
Don't mind me. I'm happy as a cricket here. Lori went away, and his guest amused herself in her own way. She was standing before a fine portrait of the old gentleman when the door opened, and, without turning, she said, I'm sure I couldn't be afraid of him. He's got kind eyes, though his mouth is grim, and he looks as if he had a tremendous will of his own. He isn't as handsome as my grandpa, but I like him.
Thank you, ma'am. So, you're not afraid of me, hey?
Not much, sir.
And you don't think me as handsome as your grandfather?
Not quite, sir.
And I've got a tremendous will of my own. But you like me in spite of it?
Yes, I do, sir.
You've got your grandfather's spirit, if you had in his face. He was a fine man, my dear. But what is better, he was an honest and a good one. And I was proud to be his friend.
Thank you, sir.
Think the boy needs a bit of cheering up, do you?
Yes, sir. He seems a little lonely, and young folks would do him good, perhaps. We're only girls, but we should be glad to help if we could, for we don't forget the splendid Christmas present.
Tut, tut, tut. That was the boy's affair. I shall come see your mother some fine day. Tell her so. There's the tea bell. Come down and go on being neighborly.
After the winter, the spring found the little women in their beloved garret. Every Saturday evening they met together as the Pickwick Club. Meg, the eldest, was Mr. Samuel Pickwick. Beth was Mr. Tracy Tupman, and Amy was Nathaniel Winkle.
Mr. President,
Mr. Augustus Snodgrass,
I wish to propose the addition of a new member, Mr. Theodore Lawrence.
No, Joe, you can't.
We'll put it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary-minded? No!
We don't wish for any boys. This is a ladies' club. We wish to be private and proper.
I'm afraid he'll laugh and make fun of us later.
Sirs, I give you my word as a gentleman. Lori won't do anything of the sort, and he does so much for us.
Yes, we ought to do it, even if we are afraid. I say he may come, and his grandfather too.
Hear, hear!
Hear, hear!
Music! Here, here,
God bless you.
Mr. President and ladies, I beg pardon, gentlemen, allow me to introduce myself as Mr. Samuel Weller, the very humble servant of the club. No one ever regretted the admittance of Sam Weller. For a more well-behaved, devoted, and jovial member no club could ever have.
The family found themselves eager to visit with the Lawrences. Mrs. March wanted to talk about her father with the old man who had not forgotten him. Meg longed to walk into the conservatory, Beth sighed for the grand piano, and Amy for the fine pictures and statues. Everyone liked Laurie, and he privately informed his tutor that the Marches were regularly splendid girls.
But Beth, though yearning for the grand piano, could not pluck up the courage to go to the mansion of bliss, as Meg called it. She went once with Joe, but the old gentleman, not being aware of her infirmity, stared at her so hard from under his heavy eyebrows, and said "Hey" so loud that she ran away, declaring she would never go there any more, not even for the dear piano.
No persuasions or enticements could overcome her fear, till the fact came to Mr. Lawrence's ear in some mysterious way, and he set about mending matters. "You know, ma'am, the boy neglects his music now, and the piano suffers for want of use. Wouldn't one of your girls like to run over and practice on it now and then, just to keep it in tune? You know, ma'am, they needn't see nor speak to anyone. Just run in at any time. I'm shut up at my study at the other end of the house. Laurie is out a great deal, and the servants are never near the drawing room after 9 o'clock. Please tell the young ladies what I say, and if they don't care to come, then...
Oh, sir, they do care. Very much.
Are you the musical girl?
I'm Beth. I love it dearly, and I'll come, if you are quite sure nobody will hear me and be disturbed.
Not a soul, my dear. The house is empty half the day. So come, and jam away as much as you'd like.
How kind you are, sir.
I had a little girl once, with eyes like those. Bless you, my dear. Good day, madam.
After that, the little brown hood slipped through the hedge nearly every day, and the drawing room was haunted by a tuneful spirit that came and went unseen. She never knew that Mr. Lawrence opened his study door to hear the old-fashioned airs he liked. She never saw Laurie mount guard in the hall to warn the servants away. Mother, I'm going to make Mr. Lawrence a pair of slippers. He is so kind to me, always, and I must thank him, and I don't know any other way. May I do it?
Yes, it will please him very much and be a nice way of thanking him.
Beth worked away early and late. Then she wrote a simple note, and with Laurie's help, got her slippers smuggled onto the study table one morning and waited to see what would happen. All day passed, and part of the next, and she was beginning to fear she had offended her crotchety friend.
On the afternoon of the second day, Beth went out to do an errand, And on her return, she saw two, yes, three heads popping in and out of the parlor windows. The moment they saw her, several hands were waved and several joyful voices screamed,
Here's a letter from the old gentleman. Come quick and read it.
Oh, Beth, he's sick! Come on, look there, look there!
Beth did look and turned pale with delight and surprise, for there stood a little cabinet piano with a letter lying on the glossy lid directed like a signboard to Miss Elizabeth March. For me?
Yes, all for you, my precious. Isn't it splendid of him? Don't you think he's the dearest old man in the world? Here's the letter.
Oh, you read it. I can't. It is too lovely.
Miss March, dear madam.
How nice that sounds. I wish someone would write to me like that.
I have had many pairs of slippers in my life,
but none that ever fit me so well as yours. Heartsease is my favorite flower, and always will remind me of the gentle giver. I like to repay my debts, so I know you will allow the old gentleman to give you something which once belonged to the little granddaughter he lost. With hearty thanks and best wishes, I remain your grateful friend and servant, James Lawrence.
Your grateful friend and servant. Think of him writing that to you.
Try it, honey. Let's hear the sound of the baby piano.
You'll have to go and thank him.
Yes, I guess I'll go now before I get frightened thinking about it.
And to the utter amazement of the assembled family, shy little Beth went directly down the garden, through the hedge, and in at the Lawrences' door. Well, I wish I may die if it ain't the queerest thing I ever seen. The piano has turned her head.
And they would have been still more amazed if they had seen what Beth did afterward. She went and knocked at the study door. She marched right up to Mr. Lawrence and held out her hand, saying, I came to thank you, sir, for...
But she didn't finish, for he looked so friendly, and she totally forgot her speech. And only remembering the little granddaughter he lost, she threw her arms around him and kissed him. If the roof of the house had suddenly flown off, the old gentleman couldn't have been more astonished. But he was so pleased and touched by that confiding little kiss that all his crustiness vanished, and Beth ceased to fear him from that moment. When she went home, he walked with her to her gate, shook hands cordially, touched his hat, and marched back, looking stately and erect, like the soldierly, handsome gentleman he was.
Many things changed that year, and early one spring morning, little Amy, who fancied herself quite the fine young lady, was feeling sorry for herself. I wish I had some money.
Why?
Because I am dreadfully in debt. I owe at least a dozen pickled limes and I can't repay them.
Are limes the fashion now?
Oh, yes. All the girls are buying them. And unless you want to be thought of as mean, you must do it too. It's treat by turn, and I have had ever so many limes and I can't return them. And I must. They're debts of honor, you know.
How much will pay them off and restore your credit?
A quarter would more than do, and leave a little left over for a treat for you. Don't you like limes?
Not much. You may have my share. Make it last as long as you can.
Thank you. It must be so nice to have pocket money. I'll have a grand feast. I haven't tasted a lime this week. I felt delicate about asking, seeing as I couldn't return them.
The next day, the rumor that Amy March had delicious limes circulated through her set.
And the attention from her friends became quite overwhelming.
Sally Gardner invited her to her next party on the spot.
And Jenny Snow, a satirical young lady who had basely twitted Amy upon her limeless state,
Promptly buried the hatchet.
but Amy had not since forgotten Miss Snow's cutting remarks and instantly crushed her hopes. You needn't be so polite all of a sudden, 'cause you won't get any.
Excuse me, Miss Davis. Ma'am, but Amy March has pickled limes.
Now, Miss Davis had declared limes to be a contraband article and had solemnly vowed to publicly punish the first person found breaking the law. This much enduring woman had succeeded in banishing chewing gum after a long and stormy war, made a bonfire of confiscated novels and newspapers, suppressed a private post office, and done all that one woman could do to keep 100 rebellious girls in order. Miss Davis had evidently taken her coffee too strong that morning, and there was an east wind, which always affected her neuralgia. To use the expressive language of a schoolgirl, she was as nervous as a witch and as cross as a bear. The word limes was like fire to powder. Young ladies, attention if you please. Miss March, come to the desk and bring with you the limes. Now take those disgusting things and throw them out the window. Young ladies, you remember what I said to you a week ago. I am sorry this has happened, but I never allow my rules to be infringed, and I never break my word. Hold out your hand. Your hand, Miss March.
Amy set her teeth, threw her head back defiantly, and bore without flinching the striking blows on her little palm. They were neither many nor heavy, but it made no difference to her. For the first time in her life, she had been struck, and the disgrace was as deep as if she had knocked her down.
You will now stand on the platform till recess.
In the 15 minutes that followed, the proud and sensitive little girl suffered a pain and shame she never forgot. But the smart of her hand and the ache of her heart were drowned out in the sting of the thought, I shall have to tell at home, and they will be so disappointed in me.
You can go, Miss March. And go she did, straight out of the school and the schoolyard, never to return.
Before school closed, Jo appeared, wearing a grim expression as she stalked up to the desk and delivered a letter from her mother, then collected Amy's property and departed. Carefully scraping the mud from her boots as if she shook the dust of the place off her feet.
Yes, you can have a vacation from school, but I want you to study a little every day with Beth. I dislike Miss Davis's manner of teaching. Don't think the girls you associate with are doing you any good.
I hope all the girls leave and spoil her old school. It's maddening to think of those lovely limes.
I'm not sorry you lost them, for you broke the rules and deserved punishment.
Do you mean you're glad that I was disgraced in front of the whole school?
I should not have chosen that way of mending a fault. But I'm not sure it won't do you more good than a milder method. You're getting rather conceited, my dear. It's quite time you set about correcting it. The good many little gifts, there's no need of parading them.
Growing up is never easy, but sometimes older sisters can make the waiting worse. Girls, where are you going?
Never mind. Little girls shouldn't ask questions.
Do tell me. I should think you might let me go too.
I can't, dear, because you aren't invited.
Now, Meg, be quiet or you'll spoil it all. You can't go, Amy, so don't be a baby.
I know. You're going to the theater. I shall go too. It was mean of you not to tell me in time.
Suppose we take her?
If she goes, I'm not. And if I don't go, Lori won't like it. And it'll be very rude after he invited only us to go and drag in Amy. I should think she'd hate to poke in where she isn't wanted.
You don't care about anyone but yourself.
Now, Amy, be sensible, dear.
Ready, ladies?
You'll pay for this, Joe March. See if you don't.
Fiddlesticks! When they got home, they found Amy reading in the parlor. She assumed an injured air and never lifted her eyes from her book or asked a single question. Joe decided that Amy had forgiven and forgotten her wrongs.
But there Joe was mistaken. The next day she made a discovery that produced quite the tempest.
Has anyone taken my book? Amy, you've got it.
No, I haven't.
You know where it is then.
No, I don't.
That's a fib.
I don't know where it is right now, and I don't care.
You know something about it, and you better tell at once.
Scold as much as you like. You'll never see your silly old book again.
Why not?
Because I burned it up.
What? My little book I was so fond of and worked over and meant to finish before Father got home? Have you really burned it?
I told you I'd make you pay for being so cross yesterday, and I have.
You wicked, wicked girl! I can never write it again, and I'll never forgive you as long as I live!
Jo's book was the pride of her heart and was regarded by her family as a literary sprout of great promise. Amy's bonfire consumed the loving work of several years. It seemed a small loss to others, but to Jo it was a dreadful calamity, and felt it never could be made up to her. Beth mourned as for a departed kitten, and Meg refused to defend her favorite sister. Mrs. March looked stern and grave until Amy felt that no one would love her again, till she asked pardon for the act she now regretted more than anyone.
Please forgive me, Joe. I'm very, very sorry.
I will never forgive you. Nothing seemed to go right the next day. Everyone was cross. It was a bitterly cold day for the time of year, and as it was probably the last day of ice on the river, Joe invited Lori to go skating. Naturally, Amy had to tag along. Joe decided to just ignore her.
Oh, no. Keep near the shore. It isn't safe in the middle.
Amy, did you hear? Never mind. Are you sure she's safe?
Quite safe, dear. She's not hurt, won't even take cold, I think.
Mother, if she should die, it would be my fault. It's my dreadful temper. I tried to cure it. I think I have, and then it breaks out worse than ever. Oh, Mother, what shall I do?
Watch and pray, dear. Never get tired of trying. Never think it is impossible.
And you don't know how bad it is. It seems as if I could do anything when I'm in a passion. I'm afraid I'll do something dreadful someday. Oh, Mother, help me. Do help me.
We all have our temptations, Joe. It often takes us all our lives to conquer them. You think your temper is the worst in the world? Well, mine used to be just like it.
Yours, Mother? Why, you're never angry.
I'm angry nearly every day of my life, Joe. But I've learned not to show it. I still hope to learn not to feel it, though it may take me another 40 years.
I let the sun go down on my anger. I wouldn't forgive you. If it hadn't been for Lori, it would have been too late. How could I be so wicked?
The summer hinted at even more change as the social circle of the Little Women widened even further.
Welcome to Camp Lawrence. It was a day filled with good food, fun games, and conversation. Lori invited some visitors from England to join the festivities, but they snubbed the tutor and governess. Lori rowed one boat and Brooke the other, and, though there was much beauty to behold, Brooke had eyes only for Miss Margaret. Time for croquet!
I'd forgotten that the English people really turn up their noses at governesses.
Tutors also have a rather hard time of it. There is no place like America for us workers, Miss Margaret.
I'm glad I live here then. I only wish I liked teaching as you do.
I shall be sorry to lose Lori to college next year.
And what becomes of you?
I shall turn soldier. I am needed.
I'm glad of that. I should think every young man would want to go, though it is hard for the mothers and daughters who stay behind.
Well, I have neither. And few friends to care.
Laurie and his grandfather would care a great deal. And we should all be very sorry should any harm come to you.
Well, thank you, Miss Margaret.
Jo never did try to recreate her lost masterpiece, but she continued to write. One summer day, when her sisters noticed her acting even more oddly than usual, she arrived home with a surprise. Have you anything interesting there?
Nothing but a story. Won't amount to much, I guess.
You better read it aloud. It'll amuse us and keep us out of mischief.
With a loud and a long breath, Jo began to read very fast. The girls listened with interest, for the story was romantic and somewhat pathetic, as most of the characters died in the end.
I like that best about the splendid picture.
I prefer the lovering part. Viola and Angelo are two of our favorite names. Isn't that funny?
Who wrote it?
Your sister.
I knew it. Oh, Jo, I'm so proud.
Tell us about it.
When did it come?
How much did you get for it?
Stop your jabbering and I'll tell you everything. I submitted 2 stories and the man said he liked them both, but didn't pay beginners, only let them print in his paper. So I let him have the 2 stories, and today this was sent to me. And he said it was good, and I shall write more. And he's going to get the next paid for. I'm so happy, for in time I may be able to support myself and help you girls.
Jo's breath gave out here, and wrapping her head in the paper, she bedewed her little story with a few natural tears. For to be independent and earn the praise of those she loved were the dearest wishes of her heart. In the next few months, Jo published a few more stories, and the little family waited for the one member who was missing to join them again. As fall progressed and that happy day grew nearer, it seemed also to grow dearer, so that when the terrible blow fell, it was all the more shocking.
It's one of them horrid telegram things, Mum.
Mrs. March, your husband is very ill. Come at once.
I shall go at once. But it may be too late. Oh, children, help me to bear it.
The Lord keep the dear man. I won't waste no time a-crying, but get your things ready.
She's right. There's no time for tears now. Be calm, girls, and not think. Where's Lori?
Oh, here, ma'am. Oh, let me do something.
Send a telegram saying I shall come at once. The next train goes early in the morning.
What else? I can go anywhere, do anything.
Leave a note at Aunt March's. Now go. Don't kill yourself riding at a desperate pace. Jo, go get these things I've put down. You must go prepared for nursing. Beth, go ask Mr. Lawrence for a couple bottles of wine. I'm not too proud to beg for Father. Amy, go tell Hannah to get down the black trunk. And Meg, come and help me find my things. I'm half bewildered.
Mother, do sit for a moment and let us. Everyone scattered like leaves before an evil wind. Old Mr. Lawrence came hurrying back, bringing every comfort that the kind old gentleman could think of for the poor invalid. Later, as Meg ran through the entry, she came suddenly upon Laurie's tutor, Mr. Brooke.
I'm very sorry to hear about your father, Miss March. I came to offer myself as escort to your mother. Mr. Lawrence has commissions for me in Washington, and it will give me real satisfaction to be of service to her there.
How kind you are. Mother will accept, I'm sure, and it will be such a relief to know that she has someone to take care of her. Thank you very much.
Not at all. Not at all.
Will you excuse me?
Laurie returned with a note from Aunt March, enclosing the desired sum, and a few lines repeating what she had often said before, how she had always told them it was absurd for Mr. March to go into the army, and she had always predicted no good would come of it. Mrs. March put the note in the fire and the money in her purse, and went on with her preparations, with her lips folded tightly in a way Joe would have understood. The short afternoon wore away, but still Joe did not come. They began to get anxious, and Laurie went out to look for her, for no one knew what Joe might take into her head.
$25. Joe, I hope you haven't done anything rash.
No, it's mine, honestly. I didn't beg, borrow, or steal it. I earned it, and I don't think you'll blame me, for I only sold what was my own.
Joe, your hair, your beautiful hair. Oh, Joe, how could you? You're one beauty.
It will be good for my vanity. I was getting too proud of my hair. It'll do my brains good to have that mop off.
She doesn't look like my Jo anymore, but I love her dearly for it.
Tell me about it, Joe. I am not quite satisfied, but I can't blame you, for I know how willingly you sacrificed your vanity, so you call it to your love.
What made you do it?
I hadn't the least idea of it at first, but as I went along, I kept thinking about what I could do for Father, and feeling as if I'd like to dive into some of the rich stores and help myself. In a barber's window, I saw tails of hair with the prices marked, and one black tail, not so thick as mine, was $40. I just walked in and asked what they would give me for mine.
I don't see how you dare to do it.
Didn't it feel dreadful when the first cut came?
I never snivel over trifles like those. I will confess, though, I felt rather queer when I saw the dear old hair laid out on the table. The man's wife saw me look at it and picked out a long lock for me to keep. I'll give it to you, Marmee. Just remember past glories by, for crop is so comfortable, I don't think I'll ever have a mane again.
Go to bed, and don't talk, for we must be up early and need all the rest we can get. Good night, my darlings. They kissed her quietly, went to bed as silently as if the dear invalid lay in the next room. Beth and Amy soon fell asleep in spite of the great trouble, but Meg lay awake, thinking the most serious thoughts she had ever known in her short life. Jo lay motionless, but her sister fancied she heard a stifled sob for her one beauty.
My dearest mother, it is impossible to tell you how happy your last letter made us, for the news was so good we couldn't help laughing and crying over it. How very kind Mr. Brooke is. The girls are all as good as gold. Joe helps me with the sewing and insists on doing all sorts of hard jobs. Beth is as regular about her tasks as a clock and never forgets what you told her. Amy minds me nicely, and I take great care of her.
My precious Marmee, 3 cheers for dear father. I rushed up to my garret when the letter came and tried to thank God for being so good to us, but could only cry and say, I'm glad, I'm glad. Didn't that do as well as regular prayer? Yesterday, I made a funny poem while I was helping Hannah with the wash, and as father likes my silly little things, I put it in to amuse him.
Dear Mother, there is only room for me to send my love and some pressed pansies from the root I have been keeping safe in the house for Father to see. I read every morning, try to be good all day, and sing myself to sleep with Father's tune. Amy wants the rest of the page, so I will stop.
Ma chère maman, I send heaps of love to Papa. I miss him so. I always do my lessons and never cooperate with the other girls. Meg says I mean contradict, so I put in both and you can choose the properest. I bear my troubles well, but I do wish Hannah would put more starch in our apron and let us have buckwheats every day. Can't she?
A song from the suds. Queen of my tub, I merrily sing, while the white foam rises high, and we sturdily wash and rinse and wring and fasten the clothes to dry. I wish we could wash from our hearts and souls the stains of the week away. Then on the earth there would be indeed a glorious washing day.
Old Mr. Lawrence watches over us like a motherly old hen, as Joe would say, and Laurie is very kind and neighborly. Hannah is a perfect saint. She does not scold at all and always calls me Miss Margaret, which is quite proper, you know. We are all well and busy, but we long day and night to have you back.
Dear Ms. March, I just drop a line to say we get on first rate. The girls is clever and fly round right smart. Miss Margaret is going to make a proper good housekeeper. Joe does beat all for going ahead, but she don't stop to calculate first, and you never know where she's like to end up. Beth is the best of little critters, and a sight of help to me, being so dependable. Amy does well without fretting. Mr. Laurie comes round and turns the house upside down frequent, but he heartens the girls, so I let them have full swing. The old gentleman sends a heap of things and is rather wearing, but he means well, and it's not my place to say nothing. My bread is riz, so no more at this time.
Head nurse of Ward number 2. All serene on the Rappahannock, troops in fine condition, commissary department well conducted, the home guard under Colonel Teddy always on duty. Commander-in-Chief General Lawrence reviews the army daily, and Quartermaster Hannah keeps order in the camp. A salute of 24 guns was fired upon receipt of good news from Washington, and a dress parade was held at headquarters.
Dear Madam, the little girls are all well. Beth and my boy report daily. Hannah is a model servant and guards pretty Meg like a dragon. Glad the fair weather holds. Pray, make Brooke useful and call on me for funds if expenses exceed your estimate. Don't let your husband want anything. Thank God he is mending. Your sincere friend and servant, James Lawrence.
Commander-in-Chief sends his best wishes, in which he is heartily joined by Colonel Teddy.
I send my duty to Mr. March, and pray that he has seen the last of his pneumonia. Yours respectful, Hannah Mullet.
Give my love to Father and to dear Mr. Brooke, and believe me, ever your own.
Give Father my lovingest hug that ever was, and kiss yourself a dozen times for your...
Kiss to your father on the cheek he calls mine, and do come soon to your loving...
Adieu, I send all my love to Papa, your affectionate daughter.
Meg. Topsy-turvy Joe.
Little Beth.
Amy Curtis March.
Meg, I wish you'd go and see the Hummels. You know Mother told us not to forget them.
I'm too tired this afternoon.
Can't you, Joe?
Too stormy for me with my cold.
I thought it was almost well.
It's well enough to go out with Lori, but not well enough to go and see the Hummels.
Why don't you just go yourself?
I have been every day, but the baby is sick, and I don't know what to do for it. Mrs. Hummel goes away to work, and Lottie takes care of it, but it gets sicker and sicker.
I'll go tomorrow, honey. I'll promise.
Ask Hannah for some nice little treat and take it round, Beth. There will do you good. I'd go, but I want to finish my writing.
My head aches, and I'm tired, so I thought maybe some of you would go.
Amy will be in presently, and she'll run down for us.
So Beth lay down on the sofa, the others returned to their work, and the Hummels were forgotten. An hour passed. Amy did not come. Jo was absorbed in her story when Beth quietly put on her hood and went out into the chilly air. It was late when she came back.
Half an hour later, Jo found little Beth, looking very grave, with red eyes and a camphor bottle in her hand. Christopher Columbus, what's the matter?
Stay away! You've had the scarlet fever, haven't you?
Years ago when Meg did. Why?
Oh, Jo, the baby's dead.
What baby?
Mrs. Hummel's. She died in my lap before Mrs. Hummel got home.
Oh, my poor dear, how dreadful for you. I ought to have gone.
It wasn't dreadful, Jo, only so sad. She seemed asleep, but then all of a sudden she gave a little cry and trembled, and then lay very still.
Don't cry, dear. What did you do?
I just held her softly till Mrs. Hummel came with the doctor. He said she was dead. Scarlet fever, ma'am.
Beth, if you're sick, I'll never forgive myself.
I guess I won't have it badly. I looked in Mother's book and saw that it begins with headache, sore throat, and queer feelings like mine. So I took some belladonna, and I feel better.
I'll call Hannah. She knows all about sickness.
Don't let Amy come. She never had it, and I should hate to give it to her.
Hannah, that good soul, was awake in a minute and took the lead at once, assuring that there was no need to worry. Everyone had scarlet fever. Now, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll have Dr. Bangs just to take a look at you, dear, and see that we start right. We'll send Amy off to Aunt March's for a spell, just to keep her out of harm's way. And one of you two girls can stay at home and amuse Beth for a day or two.
I shall stay, of course. I'm the oldest.
No, I shall. It's my fault she's sick. I told Mother I'd do the errands, and I haven't.
I'll go and tell Amy.
Dr. Bangs came, and Amy was ordered off at once, and she departed in a great state, with Jo and Laurie as escort. Aunt March received them with her usual hospitality.
do you want now?
Laurie retired to the window as Jo told her story.
No more than I expected. If you are allowed to go poking about among poor folks, Amy can stay and make herself useful if she isn't sick, which I've no doubt she will be. Don't cry, child. It worries me to hear people sniff. What do you hear from your mother?
Father's doing much better.
Well, that won't last long, I fancy. March never had any stamina. Well, Josephine, you'd better go at once. It isn't proper to be gadding about so late with a rattle-pated boy like that.
Beth did have the fever and was much sicker than anyone but Hannah or the doctor had suspected. Meg stayed home and kept house, feeling very anxious and a bit guilty as she wrote letters in which no mention was made of Beth's illness. Hannah wouldn't hear of Mrs. March being told and worried for such a trifle.
Jo devoted herself to Beth day and night. Not a hard task, for Beth was very patient and bore her pain uncomplainingly as long as she could control herself. But there came a time when, during the fever fits, she began to talk in a hoarse voice, to play on the coverlet as if on her little piano, and to try to sing with a throat so swollen there was no music left, a time when she did not know the familiar faces around her, and called imploringly for her mother.
Then it was that Meg felt how rich she had been in things more precious than the luxuries money can buy.
Then it was that Jo learned to see the beauty and sweetness of Beth's nature, and to acknowledge the worth of her unselfish ambition to live for others.
And Amy, in her exile, longed to be home, that she might serve Beth, for she remembered how many neglected tasks those willing hands had done for her.
The 1st of December was a wintry day indeed, for a bitter wind blew, snow fell fast, and the year seemed getting ready for its death. When Dr. Bangs came that morning, he looked long at Beth and said only, "If Mrs. March can leave her husband, she better be sent for." The girls never forgot that night. No sleep came to them as they kept their watch.
If God spares Beth, I will never complain again.
If God spares Beth, I'll try to love and serve him all my life.
I wish I had no heart. It aches so.
Goodbye, my Beth.
The fever's broken. Her skin's damp. She breathes easy. She's sleeping natural. Oh, praise be given. Oh, my goodness me.
If Mother would only come now.
Girls, she's come. She's come.
Mother! Oh.
Even in their joy, they could not forget that other hole in their family. Meg sat down immediately and began to write her father a letter.
Quite right, and beautifully written. Please add that I send my love to John.
Do you call him John?
Yes, he's been like a son to us. We are very fond of him.
I'm glad. He's so lonely, Mother.
Mail call. Marmee, Amy, Marmee. Here's a note for you, Meg. All sealed up. How odd. Teddy never seals mine.
It's all a mistake? He didn't send it. Oh, Joe, how could you?
Me? I've done nothing.
You wrote that, and Laurie helped you. Joe, how could you be so cruel?
My dearest Margaret, I can no longer restrain my passion and must know my fate before I return. I dare not tell your parents yet, but think they would consent if they knew that we adored one another. I implore you to say nothing to your family yet, but to send one word of hope through Laurie to your devoted John. Oh, the little villain. I'll bring him over and beg him to pay pardon.
Stop, Joe. You must clear yourself first. You have played so many pranks that I'm afraid you have had a hand in this.
On my word, Mother, I haven't. I never saw that note before and don't know anything about it. As true as I live. If I had, I'd have written a sensible note. I should think you'd have known Mr. Brooke wouldn't write such stuff as that.
It's like his writing.
Oh, Meg, you didn't answer him.
I received the first letter from Laurie, who didn't look like he knew anything about it. I was worried at first and meant to tell you, but then I remembered how you said you liked John and thought you wouldn't mind if I kept my secret for a few days.
What did you say to him?
I only said that I was too young to do anything about it, that I didn't wish to have any secrets from you, and that he must speak to Father.
What did he say to that?
Oh, he writes in a different way entirely, saying that he's so sorry that my roguish sister, Jo, should take liberties with our names. It was all very kind and respectful. But, oh, I can never look him in the face again.
I don't believe Brooke ever saw either of these letters. Laurie wrote both and keeps yours to gloat over. Oh, when I get my hands on him!
Laurie arrived under guard and much against his will. Meg fled upstairs immediately. One look at Mrs. March's face was enough to tell the poor boy how deep his trouble was. And he was so heartily sorry that Jo forgave him at once. Before many days had gone by, Meg had pardoned him as well.
Now and then in this workaday world, things do happen in storybook fashion. They did that Christmas. Half an hour after everyone said they were so happy they could only hold one drop more, the drop came. Here's another Christmas present for the March family.
As the initial excitement turned to quieter joy, Mrs. March began to thank Mr. Brooke for the faithful care of her husband, at which Mr. Brooke suddenly remembered that Mr. March needed rest, and seizing Laurie, they retired. After supper, the two invalids were ordered to rest, which they did.
Just a year ago, we were all groaning over the dismal Christmas we expected to have. Do you remember?
Rather a pleasant year on the whole.
I'm glad it's over, because we've got you back.
Well, I've made several discoveries today.
Tell us what they are.
Here's one. Meg, dearest Meg, I remember a time when this hand was smooth, and your first care was to keep it so. It was very pretty then, but to me, it is much, much prettier now. For in these seeming blemishes, I read a little history. This hardened palm has earned something better than blisters, and I'm sure the sewing done by these pricked fingertips will last a long time. So much goodwill went into these stitches. I'm proud to shake this good, industrious hand. And I hope I should not soon be asked to give it away.
What about Jo? Please say something nice, for she has tried so hard and been so good to me.
Jo, her face is rather thin and pale now, with watching and anxiety, but I like to look at it, for it has grown gentle. She takes care of a certain little person in a motherly way that delights me. I rather miss my wild girl, but if I should get a strong, helpful, and tender-hearted woman in her place, I should feel quite satisfied. I don't know whether the shearing sobered our black sheep, but I do know that in all of Washington, nothing could be beautiful enough to be bought with the $5 and $20 my good girl sent me.
Now, Beth.
Now, Beth, there is so little of her, I'm afraid to say much, for fear she will slip away altogether. Though she's not so shy as she used to be. I've got you safe, my Beth, and I will keep you so. Please, God. And I observed that Amy gave Meg her place tonight at dinner, ran errands for her mother all the afternoon, and has waited on everyone with patience and good humor. She does not fret much nor look in the mirror, so I conclude that she has come to think of others more and of herself less, and has decided to mold her character as carefully as she molds her little clay figures. I am glad of this, for though I should be very proud of a graceful statue made by her, I shall be infinitely prouder of a lovable daughter who makes life beautiful for both herself and others. For the next week, the family hovered around Mr. March, like bees around a queen, neglecting everything to look at, wait upon, and listen to the new invalid. As time went on, nothing seemed needed to complete their happiness.
But something was needed, and the elder ones felt it, though none confessed the fact. Mr. and Mrs. March looked at each other with an anxious expression as their eyes followed Meg. Meg was absent-minded, shy and silent, startled when the bell rang, and colored when John Brooke's name was mentioned.
Laurie went by in the afternoon, and, seeing Meg at the window, seemed suddenly possessed by a melodramatic fit. He fell down on one knee in the snow, beat his breast, tore his hair, and clasped his hands imploringly as if begging some favor. When Meg told him to behave himself and go away, he wrung imaginary tears out of his handkerchief and staggered around the corner as if in utter despair.
What does the goose mean?
He's showing you how your John will go on by and by, touching, isn't it?
Don't say my John. It isn't proper or true. I've told you, I don't care much about him, so there isn't to be anything said.
But something has been said, and Laurie's mischief has spoiled you for me. I see it, and so does Mother. You are not like your old self. I don't mean to plague you, but I hate to wait. So if you're ever going to do it, get it over with.
I can't do anything until he speaks.
If he did, you wouldn't know what to say.
I know just what I'd say. I've planned it all, just in case. I'll merely say, quite calmly and decidedly, "Thank you, Mr. Brooke. You are very kind, but I am too young to enter into any engagement at present. So please, say no more, and let us be friends as we were." And then I shall walk out of the room with dignity.
Good afternoon. I came to get my umbrella, to see how your father is doing today.
It's very well. He's in the rack. I'll get him and tell it you're here.
Mother will be so glad to see you. Pray, sit down and I'll go call her.
Don't go. Are you afraid of me, Miss Margaret?
How can I be afraid of you when you've been so kind to Father? I only wish I could thank you.
Shall I tell you how?
No, please don't.
I won't trouble you. I only want to know if you care for me a little, Meg.
I don't know.
Well, will you try and find out? I can't go to work with any heart until I learn whether I'm to have my reward in the end or not.
I'm too young.
I'll wait. And in the meantime, you could be learning to like me. Would it be a very hard lesson?
No. I mean, not if I chose to learn it.
Please.
But
please choose to learn, Meg. I love to teach. And this is easier than German.
no, I don't choose. Please go away and let me be.
Poor Mr. Brooke looked as if his lovely castle in the air was tumbling about his ears. What would have happened next, I can't say, if Aunt March had not come hobbling in at this interesting minute, hoping to surprise the family. She did surprise two of them, so much that Meg started as if she had seen a ghost, and Mr. Brooke vanished into the study. Bless me, what's all this?
It's Father's friend. Aunt March, I'm so surprised to see you.
That's evident. But what is Father's friend saying to make you look like a peony? There's mischief going on, and I insist upon knowing what it is.
We were only talking. Mr. Brooke came for his umbrella.
Brooke? That boy's tutor? Ah, I understand now. You haven't gone and accepted him, child.
Hush! How dare you? Shall I call Mother?
Not yet. I've something to say to you. Tell me, do you intend to marry this cook? If you do, not one penny of my money ever goes to you. Remember that. Now, Aunt March possessed in perfection the art of rousing the spirit of opposition in the gentlest people, and enjoyed doing it. If Aunt March had begged Meg to accept John Brooke, she would probably have declared she couldn't think of it. But as it was,
I shall marry whomever I please, and you can leave your money to whoever you like.
is that the way you take my advice, miss? You'll be sorry for it by and by when you've tried love in a cottage and found it a failure.
It can't be much worse than some people find in big houses. Father and mother like John.
Your parents, my dear, have no more worldly wisdom than a pair of babies. This rook is poor and hasn't got any rich relations, has he?
No, but he has many warm friends.
You can't live on friends. Try it and see how cool they'll grow.
John is good and wise. He's got heaps of talent, he's willing to work, and he's sure to get on. He's so energetic and brave. Everyone likes and respects him, and I am proud to think that he cares for me.
He knows you've got a rich aunt, child. That's the secret of his liking.
Aunt March! How dare you say such a thing? I won't listen to you a minute if you talk like that. My John wouldn't marry for money any more than I would. I'm not afraid of being poor. I've been happy so far, and I know I shall be with him because he loves me, and I love...
Well, I wash my hands of the whole affair. You are a willful child, and you've lost more than you know by this piece of folly. Your Mr. Book's friends must take care of you. I'm done with you forever.
Nobody ever knew what went on in the parlor that afternoon, but a great deal of talking was done, and quiet Mr. Brooke astonished his friends with the eloquence in which he pleaded his suit, told his plans, and persuaded them to arrange everything just as he wanted. And so the curtain falls upon Meg, Joe, Beth, and Amy, and the first act of the domestic drama called Little Women.
We will now have a 15-minute intermission.
You do look like our dear old Meg, only so much sweeter and lovely. That I should hug you if it wouldn't crumple your dress.
Oh, Amy, Joe, Beth, please do hug and kiss me. I don't care if I make any crumples in my dress. I just want to remember the day. This wedding was to be as natural and homelike as possible, with no performance or grand ceremony. When Aunt Marta arrived, she was scandalized to see the young bride come running to welcome her.
Upon my word, here's the state of things. You oughtn't to be seen to the last minute, child.
I'm not a show, Auntie, and nobody is coming to stare at me.
Jupiter Ammon! Joe's upset the cake again.
Don't let that Lawrence boy near me. He worries me worse than mosquitoes.
For the beauty of the earth, for the beauty of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies. Lord of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise.
There was no bridal procession, but a sudden silence fell as the young couple took their places. Mother and sisters gathered close, and the fatherly voice broke more than once as he pronounced the words that bound the two young hearts. The bridegroom's hand trembled visibly, and no one heard his replies. But Meg looked straight up into her husband's eyes and said,
I will.
with such tender trust that even Aunt March sniffed. The minute they were fairly married, Meg cried,
The first kiss for Marmee!
During the next 15 minutes, everyone availed themselves to their fullest extent, to Mr. Lawrence, to old Hannah.
Bless you, dearie. 100 times. The cake ain't hurt a mite, and everything looks lovely.
I wish you well, my dear. I heartily wish you well. But I think you'll be sorry for it. You've got a treasure, young man. See that you deserve it.
Laurie, my lad, if you ever want to get married, get one of those March girls to help you out, and I should be perfectly satisfied.
I'll do my best to gratify you, sir.
After the wedding, things settled down in two little houses. While Meg was learning what it was to be a wife, her sisters continued to pursue their own destinies. One day, Joe attended a scholarly lecture in the city. The subject was the Great Pyramids, but Joe found the people more interesting than the tombs. On her right was a studious-looking lad, absorbed in an illustrated newspaper.
Oh, want to read it? That's a first-rate story.
Joe accepted it with a smile, for she had never outgrown her liking for lads, and soon became involved in the usual lurid labyrinth of love, mystery, and murder.
Prime, isn't it?
I think you or I could do as well as that if we tried.
I should think I'd be a pretty lucky chap if I could. She knows just what folks like, and gets paid well for writing it.
And so an idea was born. Joe had never tried this style of writing before, but her story was as full of as much desperation and despair as her limited experience could make it. 6 weeks is a long time to wait, and an even longer time to keep a secret, but Joe did both, and was just beginning to give up hope when a letter arrived.
Joe electrified the family by appearing before them with a letter in one hand and a check for $100 in the other. Of course, there was a great jubilee, and when the story came, everyone read it and praised it, though after her father had told her that the language was good, the romance fresh and hearty, and the tragedy quite thrilling, he shook his head. You can do better than this, Joe. Aim at the highest. Never mind the money.
I think the money's the best part. What will you do with such a fortune?
Take Beth and Mother to the seaside for a month or two.
To the seaside they went, and though Beth didn't come home as plump and rosy as could be desired, she was much better. And so, Joe fell to work with a cheery spirit. The Duke's daughter paid the butcher's bill, a phantom hand put down new carpet, and the curse of the Coventrys bought new gowns all around.
Encouraged by her success, Jo resolved to try and publish her novel. Having submitted it with fear and trembling to 3 publishers, she at last disposed of it, on condition that she would cut it down 1/3, and meant all the parts she particularly admired.
Don't spoil your book, my girl. There's more in it than you know.
Criticism is the best test of such work, and we are too partial.
That's just it. I've been fussing over the thing for so long, I don't know whether it's good, bad, or indifferent.
I don't think you should leave a word out of it. The story is more in the minds than in the actions of the people, and it will all be a muddle if you don't explain as you go.
But Mr. Allen says, leave out the explanations and let the characters tell the story.
Do as he tells you. He knows what'll sell and we don't.
Now, Beth, what do you think?
I should so like to see it printed soon.
So, with Spartan firmness, the young authoress chopped it up as ruthlessly as any ogre, and it was printed, and she got $300 for it, and enough helpful criticism to sink a battleship. You said criticism would help me, but how can it when it's so contradictory? This man says, an exquisite novel, full of truth, beauty, and earnestness. The next, full of morbid fancies, spiritualistic ideas, and unnatural characters. Another says, it's one of the best American novels in years. I know better than that. Then this one says, this is a dangerous book. Dangerous? Well, not being a genius like Keats, it won't kill me. So when I'm ready, I'll up and try again.
While Jo was learning that being an author was not always glamorous, Meg was discovering the same thing about married life. She was determined to be a model housekeeper and went through Mrs. Cornelius's recipe book as if it were a mathematical exercise. One day, John was requested to order home a dozen or so jelly jars and an extra quantity of sugar, for their currants were ripe, and Meg was determined to have jelly. The young housewife fell to work immediately, feeling no doubts about her success, for hadn't she seen Hannah do it hundreds of times?
If John had not forgotten all about the jelly, it really would have been unpardonable in him to choose that day of all the days of the year to bring a friend home to dinner unexpectedly. It's locked. I'm afraid something has happened. Step into the garden, Scott, while I look up Mrs. Brooke.
In the kitchen reigns confusion and despair. One batch of jelly trickled from pot to pot. Another lay on the floor, and a third was burning gaily on the stove. Their little servant Lottie sat eating bread and currant wine, for the jelly was still in a hopelessly liquid state, while Mrs. Brooke, with her apron over her head, sat sobbing dismally.
My dearest girl, has anything dreadful happened?
Yes!
Well, tell me quick then. Don't cry. I can bear anything better than that. Well, out with it, love.
The jelly won't gel!
Is that all? I'll buy you quarts if you want, but for heaven's sakes, don't have hysterics. I've brought Jack Scott home to dinner.
A man to dinner, and everything in a mess. John Brooke, how could you do such a thing?
Hush. He's in the garden. I forgot the confounded jelly.
Take him away at once. I won't see him, and there isn't anything to eat.
John was a mild man. But he was human. And after a long day's work, to come home to a chaotic house, an empty table, and a cross wife was not exactly conducive to repose. He restrained himself, however, and the little squall would have blown right over, but for one unlucky word. It'll be all right. Just fix us up something to eat. Give us cold meat and bread and cheese. We won't ask for jelly.
That's very funny. You must get yourself out of this scrape as you can. Take that Scott up to Mother's and tell him I'm away, sick, dead, anything. I won't see him, and you two can laugh at me and my jelly as much as you'd like.
What those two creatures did in her absence, Meg never knew, but Mr. Scott was not taken up to Mother's. Lottie reported that they had eaten much and greatly laughed, and the master bid her throw away all the sweet stuff and hide the pots. Later that evening, when both parties had calmed down, they met again.
We are going to have a new moon, my dear.
I've no objection.
My dear, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, John.
No, I am. It was too bad to laugh at the poor little jelly jars. I never will again.
But he did. Oh, bless you, yes, hundreds of times. And so did Meg, both declaring it was the sweetest jelly they had ever made, for family peace was preserved in those little jars. A midsummer came to Meg, a new experience, the deepest and tenderest of a woman's life.
How is she? But where is everybody? Why didn't you tell me?
She's resting upstairs, happy as a queen, the dear. Every soul of him is up a-worshipping. We didn't once know hurricanes round. Now, you stay down here, and I'll send them down to you.
Shut your eyes and hold out your arms.
I'd rather not. I shall drop or smash it, sure as fate.
Then you don't get to see.
All right, I will. Only you must be responsible for the damages. Twins! By Jupiter, take him quick, somebody! I'll laugh and I'll drop him.
I wouldn't have you told, for I set my heart on surprising you.
I never was more staggered in my life. Are they boys? What are you going to name them? Let's have another look.
Boy and girl. Aren't they beauties?
Most beautiful children I ever saw. Which is which?
I put a blue ribbon on the boy and a pink one on the girl. French fashion, so you can always tell.
Kiss them, Uncle Teddy.
I'm afraid they mightn't like it.
Of course they will. They're used to it by now. Do it this minute, sir.
Oh, that was the boy. He hits out with his fist like a good one. Now then, young Brooke, pick on someone your own size, will you?
He is to be named John Lawrence, and the girl will be Margaret, after her mother and grandmother. We'll call her Daisy so as not to have two Megs, and I suppose he'll be Jack, unless we can find a better name.
Name him Demi-John. Call him Demi for short.
Daisy and Demi. I knew Teddy would do it.
Here's Mother.
Come on, Joe, it's time.
For what?
You promised to make half a dozen calls with me today.
I've done a good many rash and foolish things in my life. But
You did! It was a bargain between us. I was to finish the drawing at Beth for you, and you were to go out properly with me.
if it was fair, there's a pile of clouds in the east.
It's a debt we owe society, and there is no one to pay it but you and me.
Oh, all right. Jo hated making calls, but she let her more social sister drag her around, returning the visits of those who had visited them. Last on the list was Aunt March. Oh, let's go home and never mind Aunt March today. We could go down there any old time.
Aunt March likes us to pay her the compliment of making a formal call. It's a little thing to do, but it gives her pleasure.
What a good girl you are. I wish it was easy for me to do the nice things to please people.
They found the old lady at home and eager for gossip. Are you going to help with the charity fair, dear?
Yes, Aunt. Miss Chester asked me if I would, and I offered to tend a table.
I'm not. The Chesters think it's a great favor to allow us to help with their fair. I hate to be patronized.
Well, I think it's very kind of them to let us take part in the labor and the fun.
I like your grateful spirit. It's a pleasure to help those who appreciate our efforts. Some do not, and that is trying.
I don't like favors. They oppress me. I'd rather do everything for myself and be perfectly independent.
Do you speak French, my dear?
Yes, thanks to you letting me speak to your French maid as much as I like.
I can't bear French. It's such a silly, slippery sort of language. Well, it's getting on. Come, Amy.
Oh. What is it, Marmee?
Aunt March is going abroad next month and wants
me to go with her.
No, dear, not you. It's Amy.
Oh, Mother, she's too young. It's my turn first. I've wanted it so long.
I'm afraid it's impossible, Joe. Aunt says Amy, and it is not for us to dictate.
Amy has all the fun, and I have all the work. It isn't fair.
I'm afraid it's partly your own fault, Joe. Here she writes, I planned at first to take Joe, but as favors burden her, and she hates French, I think I will not venture to invite her.
Oh, my abominable tongue. Why can't I learn to keep quiet?
Joe, dear, I'm very selfish, but I can spare you, and I'm glad you are not going away quite yet.
How many bouquets have you sent Miss Randall this week?
Not one, upon my word. She's engaged.
I'm glad. That's one of your foolish extravagances, sending flowers and things to girls for whom you don't care.
Sensible girls, for whom I do care, won't let me send them flowers and things. So what can I do?
You do flirt desperately, Teddy.
I'd give anything if I could answer, so do you. As I can't, I'll merely say that I don't see any harm in that pleasant little game.
It does look pleasant, but I can't learn how it's done.
I'm glad you can't flirt. Some of the girls I know go on at such a rate I'm ashamed of them. If they knew how we fellows talked
If you
about
behaved properly, they would. But knowing you like their nonsense, you keep it up, and then you blame them.
We don't like romps and flirts, though we may act as if we did. The pretty, modest girls are never talked about except respectfully.
Then go and devote yourself to one of the pretty, modest girls, whom you do respect.
You really advise it?
Yes, I do. But you better go to college first, and be fitting for yourself for the place in the meantime. You're not half good enough, whoever the modest girl may be.
That I'm not.
Marmee, I want to go away somewhere this winter for a change.
Why, Joe?
I brood too much over my own small affairs. I need stirring up. I like to hop a little ways and try my wings.
Where will you hop?
To New York. You know Mrs. Kirk wrote to you for some respectable young person to teach her children and sew?
My dear, go out to service in that great boarding house? But you're writing.
I shall see and hear new things, get new ideas, and bring home quantities of material.
Are these your only reasons for this sudden fancy?
I'm afraid Laurie's getting too fond of me.
Then you don't care for him.
I love the dear boy, as I always have, and am immensely proud of him. But as for anything more, it's out of the question.
I'm glad of that, Joe.
Why?
As friends, you are very happy. Your frequent quarrels soon blow over. But I fear you would both rebel if you were mated for life. You are too much alike and too fond of freedom. You're sure of his feeling for you?
He hasn't said anything, but he looks a great deal. I think I'd better go away before it comes to anything.
I agree with you. If it can be managed, you shall go.
London, dearest people, here I really sit in the front window of the Bath Hotel Piccadilly. Shopping in Regent Street is splendid, but I shall wait and get my gloves in Paris. Doesn't that sound sort of elegant and rich?
November. Mrs. Kirk welcomed me so kindly, I felt at home at once. Today, I saw something I liked. As I stood waiting at the head of the stair for a little servant girl to lumber up, I saw a gentleman come along behind her, take the heavy load of coal out of her hands, and carry it all the way up, saying, with a kind nod and a foreign accent, "It goes better so." When I mentioned it to Mrs. Kirk, she laughed and said, "That must have been Professor Bear." She said he's from Berlin, very learned and good, but poor as a church mouse, and gives lessons to support himself and 2 little orphan nephews, whom he is educating here.
London. Laurie's English friends, Frank and Freddie Vaughn, are here. Tell Beth they asked for her, and we're sorry to hear of her ill health. I really feel like a London lady, staying up so late and writing to you, with my room full of new things, and my head a jumble of parks, theaters, and new gowns.
December. Saturday there was such an uproar in the parlor that I looked in, and there was Professor Bear, down on his hands and knees, with little Tina, the laundrymaid's daughter, on his back, and Kitty Kirk leading him with the jump rope. "This is mine Effluent," said Tina. The Effluent sat up and said soberly to me, "If we make too large a noise, you shall say hush to us, and we go more softly."
Heidelberg, my dearest mamma, having a quiet hour before we leave for Bern, I shall tell you what has happened. Fred has just gone. Now, I haven't flirted, Mother, truly. I can't help if people like me. But I have decided, if Fred is to ask, I shall accept, although I'm not madly in love. But he's rich, ever so much richer than the Lawrences.
A happy new year to you all, my dearest family. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed your Christmas bundle, for I didn't receive it tonight, and had given up hoping. New Year's Day, Mr. Bear gave me a fine Shakespeare. I hope you'll know him someday. Mother would admire his warm heart, and Father his wise head.
I shall soon meet Fred in Rome, and then, if I haven't changed my mind, I will say, "Yes, thank you," when he asks me, "Will you please?"
My dearest Beth, I've begun to write again. If I can make some money, I'll take you to the mountains. Excuse me? I was looking for the weekly volcano office. I wish to see Mr. Dashwood.
You was, eh?
A friend of mine desired me to offer a story, just as an experiment.
Not a first attempt, I take it?
No, sir. She got a prize for a tale in the Blarney Stone Banner.
Oh, did she? We'll take this if you don't object to a few alterations. It's too long, but omitting the passages I'm marking will make it just the right length.
Jo looked at the marked passages and was surprised to find that all the moral reflection she had carefully put in had been stricken out. But, sir, I thought every story should have some sort of moral, so I took care to have a few of my sinners repent.
People want to be amused, not preached at, you know. Morals don't sell nowadays.
But That's wicked. I know it's only light entertainment, but I did hope to give my work some higher meaning.
Do you want higher meaning, or do you want to get paid? We take from 25 to 30 for things of this sort. Pay when it comes out.
Shall I tell my friend you will take another if she has one better than this?
Tell her to make it short and spicy, and never mind the moral. What name would your friend like to put on it?
None at all, if you please. She does not wish her name to appear.
Just as she likes, of course. Be up next week. Will you call for the money, or shall I send it?
I'll call. Good morning, sir.
Poor and proud, as usual, but she'll do.
So, you see here, where the poet speaks of his love. Miss Marsh, for what do you laugh in my face? Have you no respect for me, that you go on so bad?
How can I be respectful, Professor, when you forget to take your hat off?
I see him now. It is that imp, Tina, who makes me a fool with my cap. Well, it is nothing. But see you, if this lesson goes not well, you too shall wear him. I wish these sensation stories would not come here. They are not good for children to see, nor young people to read.
For a minute, Joe fancied the paper was the volcano. It was not, however, and her panic subsided as she realized that even if it was, and one of her own stories in it, there would have been no name to betray her.
She had betrayed herself, however, with a look and a blush, for the professor saw a good deal more than people fancied. Yes, you are right to put it from you. I do not think that good young girls should see such things. They are made pleasant to some, but I would rather give my boys gunpowder to play with than this bad trash.
All may not be bad, only silly, you know? And if there is a demand for it, I see no harm in supplying it.
There is a demand for whiskey, but I think you and I do not care to sell it.
Shall we go on, sir? I'll be very good and proper now.
I shall hope so. But now I must leave you and attend to my little nephews. Good day.
Jo got out her papers and carefully reread every one of her stories. They are trash, and will soon be worse trash if I go on. I know it's so, for I can't read this stuff without being horribly ashamed of it. And what should I do if they are seen at home, or if Professor Bear got a hold of them? At which thought, she stuffed the entire bundle into the stove, nearly setting the chimney afire with the blaze. These adventures aside, it was a pleasant winter and a long one, for she didn't leave Mrs. Kirk till June. Now, sir, you'll be sure to come and see us if you ever travel our way, will you? I want them all to know my friend.
Do you? Shall I come?
Yes, come next month. My friend Laurie is graduating then, and you'd enjoy commencement.
I fear I shall not make the time for that. But I wish your friend much success, and you all happiness. God bless you. Long after his boys were abed, the professor sat before the fire with a tired look on his face, and the Heimweh, or homesickness, heavy at his heart. Early as it was, he was at the station the next morning to see Jo off, and, thanks to him, she began her journey with the pleasant memory of a familiar face, a bunch of violets to keep her company, And, best of all, the happy thought, I've made a friend worth having, and I'll try to keep him all my life.
Whatever his motive may have been, Laurie studied to some purpose that year, for he graduated with honor, and gave the Latin oration with the grace of a Phillips and the eloquence of a Demosthenes. Joe.
No, Teddy, please don't.
It's no use, Joe. We've got to have it out, and the sooner the better, for both of us.
Say what you like then. I'll listen.
I've loved you ever since I've known you, Joe. I've tried to show it, but you wouldn't let me. Now I'm going to make you hear. Give me an answer.
I wanted to save you this. I thought you'd understand.
Oh, but girls are so queer. You never know what they mean. They say no when they mean yes, and drive a man out of his wits just for the fun of it.
I don't. I never wanted you to care for me so, and went away to keep you from it.
I only loved you all the more. And I hoped you could love me, though I'm not half good enough.
You are. You are a great deal too good for me. And I don't know why I can't love you as you want me to. I've tried. But it would be a lie to say I do when I don't.
Really? Truly, Joe?
Really, truly, dear.
You'll be sorry someday, Joe.
Oh, where are you going?
To the devil!
Oh, Teddy. I wish I could. Beth thought the mountains too far from home, so Joe took her to the seashore. She was struck by the sudden change in her sister. It had come too gradually to startle those who saw her daily, but to eyes sharpened by absence. It was very plain, and a heavy weight fell on Joe's heart. Oh, Beth.
Joe, dear, I tried to tell you, but I couldn't.
Beth, no.
I've known it for a while now, and I'm used to it. It's not so hard to bear.
Have you been keeping it to yourself all this time?
At first, I tried to think it was my imagination, but when I saw you all so well and strong and full of happy plans, it was hard to feel that I could never be like you. And then I was miserable, Joe.
Oh, Beth, and you didn't tell me? Didn't let me help and comfort you?
I wasn't sure. No one said anything, and it would have been selfish for me to frighten you all. When Marmee was so anxious about Meg, and Amy away, and you so happy with Laurie. At least I thought so then.
But you will get well. You must.
I try. But it's like the tide, Joe. When it turns, it goes slowly, but it can't be stopped. You'll tell them when we get home?
I think they'll see it without words.
I don't want any secrets, and it's kinder to prepare them. Meg has John and the babies to comfort her, but you must stand by Father and Mother. Won't you, Joe?
If I can. But Beth, don't give up yet. I won't let you think it's true.
I have a feeling I was never intended to live long. I never made any plans about what I'd do when I grew up. I couldn't seem to imagine myself anything but stupid little Beth, trotting about at home, of no use anywhere but there. I never wanted to go away, and the hard part now is leaving you all. Dear little bird, see how tame it is? I like Peeps better than the gulls. They are not so wild and handsome, but they seem happy, confiding little things. I used to call them my birds last summer, and Mother said they reminded her of me. Busy little creatures, always near the shore, and always chirping that contented little song of theirs. You are the gull, Joe, strong and wild, fond of the storm, flying far out to sea. Meg is the turtle dove, and Amy is like the lark, trying to get up among the clouds, but always dropping down into its nest again. I want to see her again, but she seems so far away.
She's coming home next spring, and I'm going to have you well and rosy by that time.
Joe, dear, don't hope anymore. It won't do any good. I think the tide will go out easily if you help me.
After Laurie's triumphant graduation and his miserable failure at love, his grandfather persuaded him to go abroad and forget. He really did his best to enjoy himself. One day, in Nice, he was strolling down the lane, admiring the fashionably dressed ladies, when one especially beautiful one caught his eye. She was young, blonde, and dressed in blue. Amy?
Laurie? Is it really you?
It really is.
How's your grandfather? When did you arrive? Where are you staying?
Very well. Last night and at the Chouvent.
I have so much to say, I don't know where to begin. I was out walking and longing for company. Now come, tell me about yourself.
Laurie went to Nice intending to stay a week and remained a month. Amy rose daily in his estimation, but he sank in hers.
Laurie, when are you going back to your grandfather's?
Very soon.
You've said that a dozen times.
Short answers save trouble.
But he expects you. You really ought to go.
I know it.
Then why don't you do it?
Natural depravity, I suppose.
Natural indolence, you mean. What would Jo say if she saw you now?
As usual. Go away, Teddy. I'm busy.
I have a new name for you. It's Lazy Lawrence. Do you want to know what I honestly think of you?
Pining to be told.
Well, I despise you.
Why, if you please?
Because, with every chance you have to be good, useful, and happy, you're faulty, lazy, and miserable.
No, pray go on. It's quite interesting.
Well, yes, selfish people do like to talk about themselves.
Am I selfish?
With money, talent, possession, wealth, beauty. Oh, you like that, don't you, old vanity? But it's the truth, so I can't help saying it. You can find nothing to do but dawdle, and instead of being the man you ought to be, you're only...
St. Lawrence on a gridiron.
I knew you'd take it so. You men tell us that we're angels, but the instant that we honestly try to do you good, you laugh at us and won't listen.
Oh, but I will be good. I will be good.
Aren't you ashamed of a hand like that? It looks like it's done nothing but wears Jolvan's best gloves and pick flowers for ladies. At least there are no diamonds or big sealed rings on it. Only the little one Joe gave you. Dear soul, I wish she was here to help me.
Well, so do I.
They ought to have told me. Joe wouldn't be kind to you?
She was kind, but not in the right way. And it's lucky for her that she didn't love me, if I'm the good-for-nothing fellow you think me. It's her fault, though, and you may tell her so.
I didn't know. I can't help wishing you'd bear it better, Teddy dear.
Don't! That's her name for me. Wait till you've tried it yourself. Do you think Joe would despise me as you do?
Yes, if she saw you now. Why don't you do something splendid for her? Make her love you.
I did my best, but it was no use.
Graduating well, you mean? That was no more than you ought to have done for your grandfather's sake. It would have been shameful to fail when everyone knew you could do well.
I did fail. Joe wouldn't love me.
There. How do you like it?
How well you draw. Yes, that's me.
This is as you are. This is as you were. I found it in my portfolio the other day, kept it to show you.
How you've improved.
And you?
My Beth, sitting patient in the shadow, till the blessed light shall come. A serene and saintly presence sanctifies our troubled home. O my sister, passing from me, out of human care and strife, leave me as a gift those virtues which have beautified your life. Hope and faith, born of my sorrow, guardian angels shall become, and the sister gone before me, by their hand shall lead me home.
I found this and read it. Have I been all that to you, Joe?
Oh, Beth, so much. So much.
And I don't feel I've wasted my life. And now, when it's too late to do any better, it's such a comfort to know that someone loves me so much and feels as if I'd help them.
More than anyone in the world, Beth. I used to think I couldn't let you go, but I'm learning to feel death can't part us.
I know it can't, and I don't fear it any longer. You must take my place, Joe, and be everything to Father and Mother when I'm gone.
I'll try.
The flowers were up early that spring, and the birds came back in time to say goodbye to Beth, who, like a tired but trustful child, clung to the hands that led her all her life, as father and mother guided her tenderly through the valley of the shadow and gave her up to God.
For the first time in many months, the fire was out. My accustomed place in the corner was empty, and the room was very still. But a bird sang on a budding bough. The snowdrops blossomed freshly at the window, and the spring sunshine streamed in like a benediction over the placid face on the pillow.
A face so full of peace that we who loved it best smiled through our tears and thanked God. Our Beth was well at last.
Amy.
Lori, I knew you'd come.
I came as soon as I heard. I wish there was something I could say to comfort you, but I could only feel...
I know. But Beth is well and happy, and I mustn't wish her back. But I dread to go home, as much as I long to see everyone. Let's not talk about that now. It'll make me cry, and I want to enjoy you while you stay. You needn't go right back, need you?
Not if you want me, dear.
Lori, so much.
The pain of their loss seemed to have broken down all barriers between Lori and Amy, and from that moment on they were nearly always together. They went for walks, attended balls, and went for rows on the lake.
You must be tired. Rest a little and let me row. It'll do me good, for since you came, I have become all too lazy and luxurious.
I'm not tired, but you may take an oar if you like. There's room enough.
How well we rowed together, don't we?
So well that I wish we might always pull in the same boat. Will you, Amy?
Back home, Jo tried to live up to her promise to Beth, but found it heavy going now that she had lost the one person whose example of serving others would have made it easier to learn. Why must life always be so drear? I can't settle my mind to anything.
Why don't you write? That always used to make you happy.
I have no heart to write. And if I did, no one cares for my things.
We do. Write something for us and never mind the rest of the world.
I don't believe I can.
But an hour afterward, her mother peeped into the garret, and there she was, scratching away.
Jo never knew how it happened, but something got into that story that went straight into the hearts of those who read it. For when her family had laughed and cried over it, her father sent it much against her will to one of the popular magazines, and to her utter surprise, was not only paid for, but others requested.
I don't understand it. What can there be in a simple little story to make people praise it so?
There is truth in it, Jo March. That is the secret. You've found your style at last. You wrote with no thought of fame or money, and you put your heart into it.
If there's anything good or true in what I write, I owe it all to you and Mother and Beth. So, taught by love and sorrow, Jo wrote her little stories and sent them away to make friends for themselves and her, finding it a very charitable world to such humble wanderers, if they were kindly welcomed, and sent home comfortable tokens to their mother, like dutiful children whom good fortune overtakes. Oh, my Teddy.
Dear Joe, you are glad to see me then?
Glad, my blessed boy. Words can't express. Where's Amy?
Oh, your mother has got her down at Meg's. We stopped there on the way, and there was no getting my wife out of her clutches.
Your what?
Oh, the dickens, now I've done it.
You've gone and got married.
Yes, please, but I never will again.
Actually married.
Very much so, thank you.
Mercy on us, what dreadful thing will you do next? Get up, you ridiculous boy, and tell me all about it. Come and fess, Teddy.
How good it sounds to hear you say Teddy. No one calls me that but you.
What does Amy call you?
My lord.
Well, you look it.
They're all coming up presently, but I couldn't wait. I wanted to be the first to tell you.
Of course you did, and spoiled your story by beginning at the wrong end. Now start right and tell me how it all happened.
Well, Grandpa wanted to come home. He only went abroad in the first place to please me, so I couldn't let him go alone. Neither could I leave Amy, and your aunt had English notions about chaperones and such nonsense. So I settled the difficulty by saying, let's be married, and then we can do as we like.
Where is she? Where's my dear old Joe?
Blessed if she ain't in silk from head to foot. Ain't it a relishing sight to see her setting there, fine as a fiddle?
She's turned into a real lady, hasn't she?
Love has done much for our little girl.
She's had a good example all her life, my dear.
As happy as Jo was for her sister and new brother, she couldn't help feeling even more alone than usual, now that even faithful Teddy had deserted her. But then came a knock on the door, and a surprise that made her forget her loneliness. Oh, Professor Bear, I am so glad to see you.
And I to see Miss Marsh. But no, you have a party.
No, we haven't. Only the family. Come in and make one of us.
If I shall not be Monsieur de Trop, I will gladly see them all. You have been ill, my friend.
Not ill, but tired and sorrowful. We've had great trouble since I've seen you last.
I know. My heart was sore for you when I heard that.
Mother, Father, this is my friend, Professor Bear.
If the stranger had any doubts about his reception, they were put at rest in a minute. As the evening wore on, Mr. Bear sat looking about him with the air of a man who knocks on a strange door and, when it opens, finds himself at home.
Dear old fellow, thought Jo, as she noticed her friend's uncharacteristically neat and elegant appearance. He couldn't have got himself up with more care, as if he'd been going a wooing.
My wife and I are very glad to meet you, sir. Please remember that there is always a welcome waiting for you over the way.
I too shall leave, but will gladly come again, if you will give me leave, madame, for a little business in the city will keep me here some days.
Of course.
I suspect that is a wise man.
I know he is a good one.
I thought you'd like him.
Mrs. Lawrence.
My lord.
That man intends to marry our Jo.
I sure hope so, don't you, dear?
Well, my love, I consider him a trump, though I do wish he was a little younger and a good deal richer.
If they love each other, it doesn't matter a particle how old they are or how poor. Women should never marry for money.
If my memory serves, you once thought it your duty to make a rich match. That accounts, perhaps, for you marrying a good-for-nothing like myself.
I forgot you were rich when I said yes. I would have married you if you hadn't a penny.
How could I doubt it? You refused a richer man for me, and won't let me give you half of what I want to now.
Laurie, should you care if Joe does marry Mr. Bear?
Ah, that's the trouble, isn't it? I thought there was something. Now, do listen. I am, without a doubt, the happiest fellow alive. And I assure you, I can dance at Joe's wedding with a heart as light as my heels. I do wish there was something we could do for that capital old professor. Couldn't we invent some rich relation who shall obligingly die out there in Germany and leave him a tidy little fortune?
Joe would find us out and spoil the whole thing. She's very proud of him, just as he is. And yesterday she was saying how she thought poverty was a beautiful thing.
She won't think so when she has a literary husband and a dozen little professors and professorins to support.
How delightful it is to be able to help others. It's always been a dream of mine to give freely. Now, thanks to you, that dream's come true.
And so it was decided then and there. The Lawrences would spend their lives helping others. It was the best use for all that money that either of them could think of, and would allow the Lawrences to work together. Charity is its own reward, but these young lovers found more reward even than most. It was not for them to give Jo what she most wanted. That honor fell to someone else.
You'd better take the little umbrella, dear. It looks like rain.
Yes, Marmee. Do you want anything in town? I've got to run in and get some paper.
Yes, I want some twilled silesia, paper of number 9 needles, and 2 yards of narrow lavender ribbon. If you happen to meet Mr. Brooke while you're out, bring him home to tea. I quite long to see the dear man. The dry goods stores were not down among the counting houses, banks, and wholesale warerooms where gentlemen most congregate. But Jo found herself in that part of the city before she had done a single errand. A drop of rain on her cheek reminded her of the little umbrella, which she had forgotten to take in her hurry.
Serves me right. What business had I to put on all my best things and come philandering down here, hoping to see the professor? Jo, I'm ashamed of you. With that, she rushed across the street so impetuously that she narrowly escaped annihilation from a passing wagon.
Seem to know this strong-minded girl who goes so bravely under many horse noses and so fast through much mud. What do you down here, my friend?
I'm shopping.
You have no umbrella? May I go also and take for you the bundles?
Yes, thank you. We thought you had gone.
And leave without saying farewell to those who have been so heavenly kind to me?
I knew you're busy with your own affairs, but we rather missed you. Mother and father especially.
I thank you, and come one more time before I go.
You are going then?
I have no longer any business here. It is done.
Successfully, I hope?
I ought to think so. have a way open to me by which I can make my bread and give my younglings much help.
Tell me about it, please. I like to know all about the boys.
My friends find for me a place in a college where I teach as at home and earn enough to make the way smooth for Franz and Emil.
How splendid it will be to have you here doing what you like and to be able to see you often. And the boys.
We shall not meet often, I fear. This place is at the west.
So far away.
Miss Marsh, I have a great favor to ask of you.
Yes?
I wish to get a little dress for Tina. I am too stupid to go alone and would gladly accept a word of advice and help.
Yes, sir.
Perhaps also a shawl for Tina's mother. Yes, a thick warm shawl would be a good thing to take the little mother.
I'll do it with pleasure, Mr. Bear.
Heart's dearest, why do you cry?
Because you're going away.
Ah, mein God, that is so good! Joe, I have nothing but much love for you. I came to see if you could care for me, and if I was more than a friend. Am I? Can you make a little place in your heart for old Fritz?
Oh, yes! Oh, Fritz, why didn't you say something before?
I had the wish to say something the day I said goodbye in New York, but I thought the handsome friend was betrothed to thee, and so I spoke not. Would you have said yes, then, if I had asked?
I don't know. I'm afraid not, for I didn't have any heart just then.
Prut! That I do not believe. It was asleep till the fairy prince came through the wood and waked it up. Ah, well, the sleep is the best, but that I should not expect.
Yes, the first love is the best, so be content, for I've never had another. Teddy was never more than a friend.
Then I shall rest well and be certain that you give me all.
Now tell me what brought you at last, just when I wanted you.
This, I found it by chance in a magazine.
It's mine, but it was published anonymously. There is no name. How did you know?
I knew. And in it, there was a little verse that seemed to call to me. Read and find him. I will see that you go not in the rain.
4 little chests, all in a row, dim with dust and worn by time. 4 women taught by weal and woe to love and labor in their prime. 4 sisters parted for an hour. None lost, only one gone before, made by love's immortal power, nearest and dearest evermore. It's very bad poetry, but I felt it when I wrote it, one day when I was very lonely.
I read that and I think to myself, she has a sorrow. She is lonely. She would find comfort in true love.
What made you stay away so long?
I could not find the heart to take you from that so happy home until I could have a prospect of one to give you. How could I ask you to give up so much for a poor old fellow like me, with no fortune but a little learning?
Don't fear poverty. I've known it long enough to lose my dread and be happy working for those I love. And don't call yourself old. I couldn't help loving you if you're 70.
Have you patience to wait a long time, Joe? I must go away and do my work alone. I must help my boys first because, even for you, I may not break my word to Mina. Can you forgive that and be happy while we hope and wait?
Yes, I know I can, for we love one another, and that makes all the rest easy.
You give me such hope and courage, and I have nothing to give back but this full heart and these empty hands.
Not empty now.
For a year, Jo and her professor worked and rated and wrote such voluminous letters that Laurie said the rise in the price of paper was accounted for. The second year began soberly when Aunt March died suddenly, And when their first sorrow was over, for they loved the old lady in spite of her sharp tongue, they found they had cause for rejoicing, for she had left Plumfield to Joe, which made all sorts of things possible.
It's a fine old house, and will bring an immense sum, for, of course, you intend to sell it.
No, I don't.
But my dear girl, it is an immense house, and will take a power of money to keep it in order. And, farming isn't in Bayer's line, I take it?
Oh, the crop we're going to raise is a profitable one.
Of what is this fine crop to consist, ma'am?
Boys. I want to open up a school for little lads. A good, happy, home-like school, with me to take care of them and Fritz to teach them.
That's a truly Joeyan plan. Isn't that just like you?
I've always wanted to do something of the sort. I told my plan to Fritz once, and he said it was just what he would like, and agreed to try it when we got rich. Bless his dear heart, he's been doing it all his life. Helping poor boys, I mean, not getting rich. That he'll never be. But now we can live at Plumfield perfectly well. Fritz can train and teach them in his own way, and Father will help him. I can pet and nurse and feed and scold them, and Mother will be my standby. Think what luxury. Plumfield my own, and a wilderness of boys to enjoy it with me.
Might I inquire how you intend to support the establishment? If all of your pupils are little ragamuffins, I'm afraid your crop won't be very profitable in a worldly sense.
Now don't be a wet blanket, Teddy. Of course I shall have rich pupils, too. Perhaps begin with such altogether. Then, when I've got a start, I'll take in a ragamuffin or two, just for relish. Rich people's children often need care and comfort, too, as well as poor. I've had experience, too, for haven't I raised one boy to be pride and honor of his family?
I'll testify that you tried.
When I have my crop, I'll just point to you and say, there's your model, my lads.
Almost before she knew where she was, Jo found herself married and settled at Plumfield.
A family of 6 or 7 boys sprung up like mushrooms and flourished. Poor boys, as well as rich, for Mr. Lawrence was continually finding some touching case of destitution, and begging the bears to take pity on the child, he would gladly pay trifle for his support. In this way, the sly old gentleman got around to proud Jo, and furnished her in the style of boy in which he most delighted.
How Jo did enjoy her wilderness of boys, and how Aunt March would have lamented had she seen her sacred precinct of prim, well-ordered Plumfield overrun.
It never was a fashionable school, and the professor did not lay up a fortune. But it was just what Jo intended it to be. A happy, home-like place for boys who needed teaching, care, and kindness.
Every room in the big house was soon full. Every little plot in the garden soon had its owner. A regular menagerie appeared in both barn and shed, for pet animals were allowed.
And 3 times a day, Jo smiled at her Fritz from the head of a long table lined on either side with rows of happy young faces, which all turned her with affectionate eyes full of love for Mother Bear.
As the years went by, 2 little lads of her own came to increase her happiness. How they ever grew up alive in that whirlpool of boys was a mystery to their grandma and aunts, but they flourished like dandelions in spring and were loved and cared for well by their rough nurses. Yes, Joe, I think your harvest will be a good one.
Not half so good as yours, Marmee. Father, here we are, and we can never thank you enough for all the patient reaping and sowing that you have done.
Students, what a tremendous job. You stop and think of how much material had to be memorized, how many set changes, all the costumes, lighting, technology, all that has to take place. Great, great job. I think we deserve to give them one more round of applause for the great job they did. I know many of you are tired, but these students were here at 6 a.m. this morning. This is their second performance, and they have one more to go. I hope also that you noticed in your program that as much work as these students have put into it, and they have put a ton of work, actually months of work, hours and hours and hours and hours. But there's so many people, and if you notice in your program, that have stepped up to help. And I hope you'll notice that in the last part of the program there, because it would not be possible without parents and so many of you who've helped in different ways. And right in the middle of it all is Mrs. Susan Beliles, and we so appreciate her leadership, and we want to appreciate her. I'm not sure where she is, but I know she's here. And then thank you friends and family, guests, classmates, for your great support for these students and all the work that they have done. So thank you so much for being here. And great news, there's one more performance, 2 o'clock tomorrow, and we look forward to that. Let's conclude our evening with a word of prayer with thanks to the Lord for His goodness to all of us. Father, we do thank you for this performance. We thank you for all the work and effort that has gone on the part of these students and all those who have assisted them. But Lord, we thank you even more for the gifts and the talents and the abilities that you've given these students. And Father, for that we rejoice. And Lord, we are so grateful for the laboratory of theater and for drama and how you use that to shape character in the lives of these boys and girls, of these students. And we're so grateful for that and that we get to be a part of it. And then, Lord, as we think about this powerful story that we've just seen played out before us, we pray that we would not miss the life lessons that have been portrayed before us by these 4 women, young women in this story, and all the others. Lord, may it not be lost on us of suffering and sacrifice and victory and perseverance and endurance and all the character qualities, Father, that we saw portrayed in this play. Father, we pray that you would impress upon our own hearts some of those very same qualities. Lord, now we ask that you would give these students the strength and the stamina and the endurance for one more performance tomorrow. And again, we thank you for all that has been accomplished. We thank you for each one who's had a part in this performance, in this play, in this production. And we give you all the praise and all the glory as we pray this together in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Thank you for coming tonight.
Actors will get demiked and they can meet you out in the lobby. After the actors get demiked,
After the actors get their mics off, they can meet you in the lobby.